Yes. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Steve Jermy from Celtic Sea Power. And Steve, it's great for you to be here. And I'd just like to just ask you, first of all, in your own words, what you do, how long you've done it for, and the name of your company. And yeah, just tell us all about your journey.
Yeah, Celtic Sea Power is a wholly owned arm's length company owned by Cornwall Council. We've been established for about a year. But actually the team here have been sort of running for about 3 or 4 years. We were something called Wave Hub, which was an offshore site, but through a long and sort of confusing at times story, we decided the best thing to do is to sell that, which we did and after reconversion to floating offshore wind, and then we repositioned the company to be a floating offshore wind regional development company. What does that mean? That means that we are tasked with making the floating offshore wind industry in the Celtic Sea, which is the sea between Cornwall, South Wales and Ireland, making that a regional success so that there is a big win for Cornwall in terms of jobs and economic development.
Wow, that's great. And I'm just very pleased to hear about your would you say your passion not only for what you do but also for creating jobs as well here in Cornwall as well. And I was going to ask you with your company and what you do, especially when we had COVID, and I'm very curious about this, is that when we had the pandemic, how did that affect you as a business leader in your business?
Not very much, does we saw it coming. So we saw it in January. So by early March, we'd sort of already repositioned ourselves. And fortunately, we were able to, all of the team were able to work offline, and it didn't really affect our operations at all. What we have been able to do subsequently, though, is get back onto a sort of balanced work process. So we've shifted working to about 2 to 3 days in the office and 2 to 3 days at home. That works very well for all the staff. And some prefer to come into the office a little bit more. Some prefer to work at home a bit more. But we always try and make Tuesday our in-office days so that we've got that sort of collaborative mindset.
Great. And what would you say is probably, I guess, your main challenges you have as a business leader?
The main challenge is that we're working in a new industry, and so it's an industry that not many people understand. The scale of what we're seeking to do is huge. So the turbines that will be put out in the Celtic Sea, the average scale of them is 15 megawatts. For those people who are local, that's one turbine is nearly as big as the Carlin Cross onshore farm up by the Shell garage, for those people who know it. So yes. One turbine is as big as the whole of that. A single turbine is going to be about 15,000 ton floating structure on which the turbine sits, and the turbine itself will be the same size as the shard. So it gives you a sense of the scale of what's going on. It's a new industry, and as a result, there's a lot of learning going on. It's not like automotive or something like that where it's all established. But that's fine. We've got a lot of offshore renewable specialists in the team and in the county. So one way or another, I think we're very well positioned to make a success of it.
Good. And how's that working out for you there? I mean, obviously you got those things in place there. How's that working for you now as a business there and looking forward into the future?
Yeah, it's working good. We've been pursuing a campaign strategy, and I use the term strategy deliberately. We've been pursuing a campaign strategy for 4 years. So in about 2018, 2019, it involved significant policy engagement. In 2019, 20 and 21, it was about establishing a market for floating offshore wind. And I should say floating offshore wind are structures. They're like conventional wind turbines, but they sit on floating structures. That's the way to think about it. So it was creating the market. That market has now been created. The world's third floating offshore wind array will probably be in Cornwall. It'll be the third in Britain as well. There are 2 already in Scotland. Thereafter, those are relatively small arrays, 32 megawatts. But thereafter, we've got 100 megawatt arrays, and then the next ones in the stream are the gigawatt arrays. So that's 1,000 megawatts. But that's going well. So we're into phase 3 now, which is industrialization, and our focus is on making sure that the early arrays are successful, and that we're also building the infrastructure in the region so that we can actually maximize Cornish and regional work capture in these very, very big projects.
That's great. That's great. And I mean, and as a business leader, I mean, if you was to start all over again, yeah, what would you do differently?
Not much really. We had I was asked to come and take over what was the Wave Hub project in 2019, and it was essentially a question of getting a new board in, which we did, some adjustments in the management, and then really getting a clear strategy and sticking to it, and we did. I don't think there's much that we would do differently, but that doesn't mean to say there aren't things that we would learn from. What we were able to do early on, though, was to establish what I call a tradition of success. So we managed to get some early successes, small successes, but then build that into the whole ethos of the company. And as a result now, it gives us a confidence which is really helpful in business.
That's right. I was going to ask you, I was going to ask you that next question. I mean, what has been your biggest learnings so far? I mean, as a business leader, I mean, I know you touched upon that just a minute ago, but can you elaborate any more on that?
Yeah, I think that the biggest learning is one which probably wasn't a surprise to me. I wrote a book on strategy, so it's something that I know about. But we have had a clear strategy. And because of that, we've been able to actually do what we wanted to do. There have been bits and pieces of learning in it, but overall, I would say that it's worked according to plan. The thing about strategy is that it isn't a fixed thing. You know, it's organic. So if you've set out with a strategy, you have to be prepared to develop it in response to changes in the market or changes in the circumstance. So I think that's gone well. I think other areas of learning, well, I think it would be difficult to say because we've been trying to mobilize a new business, having sold an old business at the same time as driving forward with what is a major regional opportunity, and it's been very busy. But overall, so far so good. Doesn't mean to say that we're there, but we have reasonably clear objectives. We have a clear strategy. We're reasonably well resourced thanks to European monies, and so far the council, as far as I can see, are very happy with what we're doing.
Come on, that's good. That's good. That's good. And what, you know, I'm going to ask you this question there. What is inspiring you today, Steve?
Yeah, the thing that inspires me is twofold. Firstly, it's that we're involved in something which is on the leading edge of something which is super important in the world, which is energy transition. I mean, that's been brought into much sharper relief with the Russia-Ukraine war. And the second thing is having a business which is comprised of older people and younger people, some really bright graduates coming in from the regional universities, but also the wisdom that, if you like, that the older team that can bring in. And what we're trying to do in the company is establish what I could call a maritime spirit. My first career was in the Navy. My chief operations officer, his first career was in the Merchant Navy. It's very much an all-of-one company approach that we're used to, having worked offshore, and we're seeking to engender that in the company so that it's a sense of shared activity, it's a sense of delegation. If something goes right in the company, it's praise to whoever it was who was responsible for it. If it goes wrong, then that's my responsibility. And yeah, we work in a way which is very delegated and empowering. So far so good. A lot to do. We're only sort of 9 to 12 months into our mobilization, but I'm happy with the progress so far.
That's great. And I was going to ask you, what have you learned about yourself personally, as a person and as a business leader in your journey being a business leader? I mean, what have you learned from this person for yourself about you?
I think I've seen, that's a good question. I mean, I've been doing leadership most of my life. So in my first career, I was a naval aviator and a naval officer, and I commanded 4 ships, a destroyer squadron and the fleet air arm. So I've done a lot of it. I think it's the learning, I would say, has been working out how to do leadership in a broad coalition. So although we're a small company, it's straightforward doing leadership there. I can't be successful unless I have a coalition of other entities who are working with me. And it's working out how to do that in a way which isn't directional, because you can't do it if you're not in control. So that's been about persuasion, and it's about powers of persuasion, how you bring people with you. Strategy is part of that. So I think is the vision. So I think is having the capacity to do thought leadership and to think disruptively and to think about doing things differently. And yeah, I'm still learning. I don't think any leader stops learning.
No, that's true. That's true. And I think one thing I'm really encouraged about, that you're surrounding yourself with a really good team to help you, progress.
Yeah.
And I think that's very key, is surrounding yourself with good people and a good team who's behind your vision for the company. That's great. And I was going to say to yourself, one last question. If you were to give, if an 18-year-old was to go into business, what advice would you give to that 18-year-old?
I think it would. My advice would be to stay flexible. I think the first thing I'd say is think about what the structure of the future looks like. And it's clear to me that energy is going to be a really big area, and that some of the things which have been great successes in the past may struggle a bit in the future. So that I would think about those areas where I know that there will always be work, and the 2 of those are food and energy, because we're always going to need them. I think as well about having some flexibility. I've got a sort of maths and oceanographic background, and then sort of some engineering as well. But I think about having some flexibility so that you can sort of pivot if necessary. I think it's for those who are interested in the military, I joined on a short service commission in the Royal Navy, and I was trained in leadership from the start, which is great. So I think my advice would be, look out there, think about the sectors that you're interested in, have a really good think about the energy side of them, because it's going to be big, and then just work slowly towards it. Gain experience where you can, build your CV, and again, if you aspire to leadership, then think about it from the very start. I was lucky when I joined Dartmouth many years ago. Leadership was right in there as part of the training, and that's served me very well.